Well, it's not the director's cut version with a DLC that we were all hoping for, but there will be a new Hogwarts Legacy game releasing this year. During Nintendo's Switch 2 reveal, Hogwarts Legacy game director Alan Tew made a surprise appearance.
We are bringing Hogwarts Legacy to Nintendo Switch 2.
Now, we have since learned additional details about this game, and it's going to be especially important for those of you who already own Hogwarts Legacy on the original Switch. And of course, for any of you who are thinking about purchasing the Switch 2, there's also some important details here. So when Nintendo announced the Switch 2, they said it would support 3 different types of games. The first game type, and certainly the most straightforward, are dedicated Switch 2 games built from the ground up for this console. Second, Switch 2 will also be backward compatible with most Switch 1 games. Nintendo has posted a few different PDFs over on their website where you can go and review the games that have issues. I personally checked all of these lists and Hogwarts Legacy did not appear on any of them, so it should be totally good to go as a backward compatible game on Nintendo Switch 2 day one. Moving on to the third and perhaps most confusing game type here, Nintendo announced what they're referring to as Nintendo Switch 2 editions. Basically, these are ports of Switch 1 games with new features to fully take advantage of the Switch 2 hardware. This could include graphics and performance upgrades, as well as new pieces of content or extra modes not included in the original. Super Mario Party Jamboree, both Zelda games, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Metroid Prime 4, and Pokemon Legends ZA were among the first titles that Nintendo has announced. What's cool about these games is they include an upgrade path for anyone who owns the original game on Nintendo Switch. So for example, I personally own both Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom on my original Switch. I could keep playing those versions of the game on the Switch 2 thanks to backward compatibility, or I could pay a $10 fee for each game to upgrade to the Switch 2 edition. Now when it comes to these Nintendo Switch 2 editions, you'll definitely want to make sure that you check what specifically is included, and you'll also want to make sure that you verify the price because it can be different depending on the game. Now at first, when the Switch 2 version of Hogwarts Legacy was announced, it wasn't immediately clear if it was a standalone Switch 2 game or if it was a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Well, we have now learned that this is not a port of the Switch 1 version, which means it is not a Nintendo Switch 2 edition. Instead, it is a dedicated standalone version of the game built specifically for the Switch 2, which means that it falls into that first category of games that we talked about. Nintendo has even released a video where Avalanche Software's VP of Technology talks about how they didn't even start with the Switch 1 assets when making this new version of the game.
That was a difficult decision because the easy path would have been to do the upport from Nintendo Switch. But we felt like we were able to create a better realization of our world by starting with the next generation assets. And we're really happy that we were able to deliver that.
So for Hogwarts Legacy fans, there's a bit of a good news, bad news situation here. The bad news is that it's highly unlikely current Hogwarts Legacy Switch owners will have any sort of upgrade path to get this new version of the game for a much cheaper price. It seems like you will have to pay full price for this game. Now, unfortunately, we don't even know what full price for this game is just yet. At the time of this recording, we don't have any reports on what Avalanche will charge for this version of the game. And this isn't simply a matter where we can look and see what other Switch games are charging because they've been a little all over the place. In case you haven't heard, there's been a huge debate regarding the price of games on Switch 2, most notably being Mario Kart World and its $80 price tag. Donkey Kong Bonanza, on the other hand, will release at $70. Some third-party titles, such as Split Fiction and Yakuza, are set at $50 price points. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see where Hogwarts Legacy falls once we get an official price. All right, now for the good news. This Switch 2 version of Hogwarts Legacy should be a much more enjoyable experience, especially compared to the Switch 1 version of the game. Avalanche is also supporting the Switch 2 Joy-Con mouse controls. Digital Foundry actually has a detailed breakdown from their hands-on with the demo of the game running on Switch 2. It appears the graphics and effects should be roughly on par with the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game, plus of course with the added benefit of being able to play on the go.
To me, this looks much more at the level of the last gen console release, like in my own personal viewing here and my analysis of the direct feed assets that we have. And that version had some substantial downgrades. Like the game, I think, is built probably primarily for current gen consoles, scaled back somewhat with last gen consoles in mind, and then scaled back much further on the original Switch. I also suspect this game might have less loading issues maybe than last gen consoles.
That being said, Digital Foundry reports the game runs at 30 FPS and does not have a performance mode for higher frame rates, at least in the demo version of the game that they had access to. Now, if this holds for the final version of the game, that would actually be a big difference from even the PS4 and Xbox One versions, which both had a performance mode to run at higher frame rates. Another interesting wrinkle in all of this is that we now know original Switch games could see free updates to improve playability, which I know is very broad. Speaking with GameSpot, Nintendo's Takahiro Doda was asked whether it was possible to see a performance boost in Zelda Breath of the Wild without upgrading to that Switch 2 edition. Quote, "First, I'll start with what happens when you play a game without applying the update, which is that, and this will depend heavily on how the original game was created and also how it was designed, but I think you can expect certain improvements such as faster load times, maybe improved frame rate. But again, it'll depend on how that game was built," close quote. So again, that's all very open and broad there. But knowing this is possible, that means there's a chance that the original version of Hogwarts Legacy on Switch 1 could see a performance bump without any changes or updates at all. You simply pop it into your Switch 2, and you could get faster load times or maybe even better frame rates. Unfortunately, we won't be able to say definitively one way or another until we have the system in our hands and can test it out. Then there's also the possibility that Avalanche could actually release a free update for Switch 1 owners to enjoy a better performing version of Hogwarts Legacy when playing on the Switch 2. Of course, we don't have anything official on that, and it certainly wouldn't come close to that standalone Switch 2 version of the game that they're working on. At the same time, it would definitely be a nice gesture of fans who already own the game and want to buy a Switch 2. Then again, Avalanche may decide it's just not worth the extra time and effort on an update like that, especially considering all the work that went into this new Switch 2 edition. There actually is a precedent for this on the Switch 2 as well. Nintendo recently announced a list of first-party Switch 1 games that will have a free downloadable update that may improve performance or add support for features such as game share in select games. Nintendo also makes it very clear that the contents of these free updates will differ depending on the game, so this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. And because we don't have anything official from Hogwarts Legacy or Avalanche yet on this, we can't say for sure one way or another what will happen with that old original version of the game. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you've been holding out hope for that Hogwarts Legacy DLC or that Hogwarts Legacy Director's Cut, unfortunately we have gotten official word that it is not happening. Now, I break that down in the video over on the right side of your screen, so check that one out next. As always, thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.